Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is PJ Malden. I am a school resource deputy for the Alachua County Sheriff's Office. I'm here today to talk to you about some school safety aspects. But before we do that, let's hold for just a second. Take a look at me. Now turn around and take a look at your teacher. Now look back at me. Now look at your teacher. One more time, look at me. Now look at your teacher. Out of everything that I'm going to talk to you about today, the number one most important thing I can say is you need to listen to your teacher in a safety situation. Everybody on the same page? The first safety situation we are going to talk about is fire. If we have a fire situation in the school where we hear the fire alarm go off, or we're even having a fire drill, there are certain steps we should take. What was the number one thing that I always told you to remember? That first step should be to look and listen to your teacher. So as we're at our desk, we should look towards our teacher and figure out what they want us to do. We gather up and we quietly line up. We get organized before we leave the classroom. We always need to make sure that we're all ready to go outside and that we check before we go outside to make sure that it's safe. Now remember, during a fire evacuation, at any moment's notice, we could go into a lockdown or Alice situation. So please listen to your teacher. And remember, there are multiple exits throughout your classrooms and throughout the campus. You may need to go out the front door. You may need to go out a classroom window, or you may even need to go out the back door. Teachers, while I exit this classroom, please go ahead if you have any other tips or if you want to talk to your students about which direction you would like them to evacuate, please do that now. Now that your teachers are done talking to you students, I just want to remind you, one of the most important things you can do in any of these safety drills is listen to your teacher. Your teacher is still the number one person for you to listen to during any critical situation going on at any of our campuses. Now let's go on to the next situation, weather. If we're having a weather situation at our schools, we need to find shelter. We need to find locations. So out of all the safety drills that we'll talk about, all the safety situations, a lot of the times we're talking about evacuating our campuses. But in a weather situation, it is completely different. We need to find shelter. We need to find locations to go to that are going to keep us safe from the weather elements. Some of those shelter locations may be gyms, maybe restrooms. We need to find brick concrete buildings. It may be the hallways and structures inside your buildings. So what's the number one thing that we always do? We listen to our teachers. So the first thing we're going to do is when we hear a weather situation or a weather alarm at our campuses is we're all going to look towards our teachers. Hey, we're listening to you, right? And then we're going to follow the lead of our teacher and we're going to go to our shelter locations. Because at any moment in time, you may be walking around your campus when you hear that. From that point, you need to go find a trusted adult. You need to go find a trusted teacher to find a shelter location. So at this time, teachers, I need you to pause the video and I need you to talk to your students about different shelter locations on campus. We'll see you guys in a little bit. I'm going to go find shelter. All right, students, have you talked about the different shelter locations and all the different places on campus you might go for a shelter location in case of a bad storm, tornado, hurricanes, all that crazy stuff? It's Florida, happens all the time. You never know. Now we're going to talk about evacuating. Before we sheltered in our locations, now we're going to talk about evacuating out of the building. For an evacuation, there's all different things that could happen, such as a potential bomb threat, such as items on campus that may need to be repaired, such as a roof and so on, maybe due to weather, just like what we talked about before. So we need to evacuate a building. First thing you're going to do is, that's right, listen to our teacher. We're going to look towards our teacher and figure out which direction are we going to go. We're going to pay attention before we exit the building or go into the hallways to exit the building. We're always going to keep our head on a swivel and look around and pay attention to see what's going on. Just like all the other situations, safety situations, we may need to go into an Alice at a moment's notice. So we need to pay attention. When we evacuate our buildings, we're going to leave our items inside the classroom. The most important thing is us, ourselves, our safety. Your personal items like your backpacks, your purses, and so on, they don't need to come with you. So make sure to leave all of those items inside the classroom and follow your teacher out to the designated locations. Teachers, at this time, please pause the video and talk to your students about potential locations we may need to go to in case of an evacuation. See you guys in a second. All right, now we're going to talk about ALICE. Does anyone know what ALICE stands for? It stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. There are all different steps that we can do within ALICE. But what's the number one step that I want you to remember? That's right, listen to your teacher. Your teacher will make the decision on what steps we use, such as lockdown. If we're in our classroom, we may need to lock down a door. So if we come over here to this door, our teacher may decide to shut the door and then barricade the door and not allow anybody into our classroom. Or she may decide we need to evacuate. If we need to evacuate, we listen to our teacher and we listen and figure out which direction we need to go. ALICE is an options-based plan that empowers your teacher to make a decision in a moment of crisis. So teachers, at this time, I want you to pause the video and I want you to talk to your students about where in the classroom you would like for them to go so you can secure your room. And then teachers, I want you to talk to your students about evacuation. Give your students tips and hints on different places that they can go in a moment of crisis for an evacuation. So today we have talked to you about multiple different safety situations. Let's break it down. We have fire, weather, evacuation such as bomb threats, such as any type of chemical spills or anything inside the building that may warrant us to evacuate. And we also talked about ALICE. It's the school board's policy lockdown drills for the county. Once again, ALICE stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, and Evacuate. If there's one thing I want you to remember, what is that? Do you remember? That's right, listening to your teacher is the most important thing you can do in a moment of crisis. Your teachers have been trained. They have been spoken to about all the different avenues that they can use in a moment of crisis. So I want you to remember, in a moment of crisis, listen to your teacher. Now when we talk about ALICE, remember it's an options-based plan. Even though it starts with alert and ends with evacuate, evacuation may be your most important thing to do at that given time. You may not lock down. You may not have to counter. You may just need to get out of your building. Also, whenever it comes to lockdown, lockdown may not be where you want to start. You may start with evacuation and then all of a sudden end up near the threat and decide to go into a classroom, a closet, into any location where you can barricade yourself in to make sure that the threat doesn't come to you. So with all these options plans, remember there are tons of different things we can do in safety measures, but we always listen to our teacher or a trusted adult. I thank you for listening to this presentation, and I hope all of you have a great school year. I hope to see you out there. Deputy PJ signing out. Catch you guys later.